I think the younger generation care a lot more about positions and job titles. I'm almost certain that I was called a sales rep, and I was absolutely delighted to do that. We don't call people sales reps anymore. We call them business development
Yeah.
executives or something else. If you just look at the top 10 brands in the UK, if you include sparkling, only 3 of them existed 25 years ago. I think the tariff thing with the US will settle down. The US is a massive market. The tariffs, the implication of the tariffs are not so significant when you look at pricing in the US. There is a lot of wines being sold at a much higher price point than in the UK and most of Europe and the US.
This is Dolia Talks with me, Giovanni Vinello. Now, Dolia Talks is the show where we discuss with the best sales and marketing professionals in the world of wine, spirits, and beverages in general. Our guest today is Robin Copestick. Robin is a true legend in the world of wine. He founded iHeart, growing it from a few 100,000 bottles to more than 30 million bottles last year. Today, he's a managing director at Freixenet Copestick, and he is a non-executive director at Mama, a startup that is revolutionizing wine packaging. This was a truly great show. Robin gave us a ton of insights, a ton of data on the world of wine, so I really think you will enjoy this. As usual, if you have any feedback, suggestions, or ideas on future guests, feel free to write an email at giovanni@getdolia.com. Enjoy the show. Hey Robin, welcome to the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I'm super excited for this.
Very much. Good to be here.
So, to start things off, I would like to start from a small introduction from yourself. So, if you can just maybe tell us how you got initially into the world of wine and tell us a bit more about what you do now.
Sure. So, I'm now 40 plus years in the wine industry, which is quite a frightening thought. I'm currently managing director of Freixenet Copestick in the UK. I'm also a non-exec director for a company called Mama, which is a sustainable packaging company. And also I do some global projects for Henkel Freixenet, which is the company that owns Freixenet Copestick. So I help look after some of the Nordic markets, the Benelux markets, Ireland, and I'm also in charge of the iHeart brand for global sales around the world. My story of how it started, it was a bit of an accident. I was in London as a 19-year-old studying in London, and London is and was then a very expensive city, and I ran out of money pretty quickly, and I knew I needed to get a part-time job. And I was living in Maida Vale, and I saw there was a Spanish wine shop which had an advert for part-time sales person to work in their shop, and walked in, and a very nice gentleman called Juan Moreno, who was the owner of the shop. It was called Moreno Wines. It was his business, and he gave me a go, and I got on incredibly well with him and ended up staying in that company for around about 19 years. And learned a lot about wine, learned a lot about the industry, learned a lot about the business, and feel very fortunate that I walked in through the door on that day.
Is there something from those early days that you still bring with yourselves in your current experience?
Well, I think the great thing about working there is that I basically got the opportunity to do every single job that there was. So I was in charge of the shop. I took deliveries. I did deliveries. I did credit control. I did invoicing. I became their first salesperson, their first sales director. I became a very young joint managing director. I was involved in marketing. So I think now when I'm running a company of over 100, 150 people, obviously the technology has changed and the industry has changed, but I do have an empathy for what all the team that work for Freixenet Copestick do and the challenges, even though they are slightly different. It does give me a quite a rounded experience, and I hope that comes across to them when they talk to me about the challenges that they go through. And it's not always possible for everybody, but it was a great experience to learn and to see every aspect of the business and how a business can run.
So you started at 19. So let's say you had a chance to walk through London and you bump into yourself at 19. what would you tell yourself? Would you tell him to still go into that shop, or would you tell him to maybe do something else?
Well, 100%. I'd push him through the door without a doubt. I'd probably say, why didn't you go in yesterday when you saw the notice? Why did you work away today? The job might have gone. Look, from those days, I could not imagine I would achieve what I have achieved. It's incredible. And I'm very proud of that, and very proud of the company, and I'm very proud of all the people that work for the company, and I've made some great friends. So it would be churlish to have any regrets or to change anything, because I've obviously made many mistakes, but you never know whether those mistakes might have led to something very positive. So I wouldn't change anything, but what I would do or like to have done is I've been to some incredible places. I started traveling to Spain in the mid-80s, then Moreno Wines discovered South American wine in the mid-90s. So I was one of the first of the UK wine people to travel to Chile and Argentina. Then when I worked for McGuigan, which is now Australian Vintage, I went to Australia a lot. When I started Copestick Murray, I then started traveling to most places in the wine world. And I've loved the travel side of it. I've met some brilliant people. I've been to some great places. I'm really bad at keeping records of taking photos. In hindsight, I would tell the young Robin to take some pictures and keep a diary, because I'd love some sort of aid memoir to everything I've done. I think it would be a good read when I finally stop working. So that's my only regret.
Nice. Then looking forward to that memoir then. So you started really at that age, and do you think there's still space for someone that's 19 in 2025? Do you think there's still space to do something like you did and just walk into a shop and start working in wine, or do you think things changed in terms of careers in wine?
I mean, there's no doubt the industry has changed. I think anybody who's entrepreneurial, who's prepared to work hard and prepared to learn, I think there's always going to be opportunity, and there's always going to be opportunity for entrepreneurs. It is difficult in different ways, and in other ways, as you can see around the world, there are lots of young entrepreneurs springing up who are doing incredibly well at a very young age. So it's different, but I still believe the opportunity is there for sure.
What advice would you give to someone young that wants maybe to start a career in wine sales? Do you think it's better to start from small establishment, go to a big one, go to directly to a producer? Which do you think is the best starting point for a sales career?
I I think that's quite a difficult question. A lot depends on the individual, but what I would say is that it definitely helps if you believe and if you trust in the product that you are selling. And I think that's the most important thing. So irrespective of the size of the company, or whether it's a producer or an agent or a distributor, just make sure that you have a passion for the product that you're selling, because that makes your job so much easier, and it makes it more enjoyable, and it means that you are more convincing as a representative of that company.
Do you think young people still have what it takes and still have the skills to work as sales reps, or do you see them maybe going through different careers? I mean, do you think there's still space for young people to work as sales reps in wine?
100%. But I think the younger generation care a lot more about positions and job titles. I'm almost certain that I was called a sales rep, and I was absolutely delighted to do that. We don't call people sales reps anymore. We call them business development
Yeah.
executives or something else. But the job is the same, and the act of selling wine is definitely a different beast to what it used to be. But the principles are still the same, even if you have to go about it in a slightly different way.
So you mentioned iHeart before. So that's
Yeah.
that's a bit the story of how you created one of the largest wine brand in the UK, no? So walk us through the origin stories of that brand, and how you tackled the brand building process from the beginning.
So iHeart was really developed about 5 years after we started Copestick Murray. We started Copestick Murray in 2005. And in 2010, we had a company, we had about 12 people in the UK. We'd already started a company in the US that was principally importing and distributing wines for the Tesco operation in the USA and doing a lot of different wine brands, different wine labels. So we'd been very successful in a short space of time, but business in the UK needed to change quite quickly. And I was very conscious that we had been building brands for big producers, and we'd been making sort of bespoke third-party labels, private labels for big retailers. So I knew that we were very good at the creation side of it. And I was very conscious that we should start becoming masters of our own destiny and that we should own our own brands. So we had a series of meetings with the team in the UK, many of whom were very creative types. And at one of the meetings, we had lots and lots of good ideas, but nothing that I thought was sort of groundbreaking until right at the end of the meeting, one of the ladies called Rachel Archer, who now works for Off-Piece, I think she was sitting on my right. She was sitting next to me, and she was, or she still is, a very creative person, but also quite quiet and reserved sometimes. And she'd been a bit silent during the meeting, but at the end of the meeting, she just passed me this piece of paper, and it very simply it was like a sketch with a big capital I and then a heart and then Pinot Grigio. And I looked at it, and I had this amazing feeling that I was looking at something that was going to be very successful. I said, would she mind if I took the little doodle, the little sketch away? And she said no. And the next day, our office was in Marlborough in Wiltshire at the time, but I was still living in London. And our label designer was a guy called Kevin Shaw, who still runs Stranger and Stranger. He was based in London at the time, in Carnaby Street. He's now moved to America. But I arranged to see him early in the morning, and I took him this sketch, and he had basically the same reaction as me, except there were a few more expletives, and he was actually a bit annoyed that he hadn't had the idea. And he said to me, it's always the simplest ideas that are the best. And he was quite amazing from that point onwards, because even though it wasn't his creation, he really helped us with the label design and the trademark. So he gave us something that meant that we could have a trademark, but we weren't infringing anybody else's trademark, and we also had something that was defendable, which is obviously important when you're creating a brand. And very quickly I made Rachel the brand manager, and we had immediate success. We got it into Tesco in the US, in their operation that's now closed, but that showed us how successful the product could be. Even though it was in California, it outsold Barefoot pretty much from day one, which was the number one sort of lifestyle brand of the time. And that gave us the real confidence to launch in the UK. And we very quickly grew. I think the first year we sold 200,000 bottles. The second year it was more like 2 million. And then sales have ramped up pretty much every year since then. The best every year was, I believe, about 32.5 million bottles. We had a bit of a dip last year, but we'll be back to that level very quickly. And then we're aiming for sort of 40 million and then 50 million by 2030, all achievable targets. It's been a very enjoyable journey, very satisfying, and great. Nice to be disruptive and successful at the same time. So it's been a lot of fun.
Wow. Which do you think, because you had success really from the start, so which do you think were the main drivers of that success?
I think what we created was something that, as I said, the simple ideas are often the best. So wine is a very confusing and intimidating topic for most wine consumers. But what we, in our minds at Copestick Murray at the time, we had realized was that the wine consumer in the UK and the same in the US had got a bit more of a knowledge than they had maybe 10 years before about what they liked and they didn't like. So things like Pinot Grigio, Sauvignon Blanc were becoming very popular. A little bit down the line for iHeart, Prosecco becoming very popular. So people knew what type of wine they liked. But when they walk into a shop, they're hit with a wall of wine. It's very confusing. It's very intimidating. They don't know what they're looking at. And it's just not a very enjoyable experience. And suddenly this label stood out. If you think about the iHeart design, it's something that is in modern day life. So if you go into airports, you often see I love duty free. Obviously, there's I love New York. So it's a symbol, it's a sign that people are comfortable with. And then suddenly there it is, it's Sauvignon Blanc. That's what I like. I love that Sauvignon Blanc I had the other day. I'm going to buy it. So it was really the simplicity and also the striking aspect of the label that made it stand out on shelf. And then obviously from our side, we just had to make sure that we had the right quality in the bottle so that people would buy the second bottle, because often it's easy to get them to buy the first, but you need to keep that quality aspect going so that they keep having the repeat purchase. That's not a secret. It's the simplicity, it's the ease, it's making customers feel comfortable with their purchase. And I think then the other aspect about iHeart, which is unique really to iHeart, is that when the consumer makes that purchase decision, they are giving information to the retailer and to the brand owner. They're saying, I love Pinot Grigio, I love Sauvignon Blanc. Whereas normally it's the brand that's trying to give the information to the consumer. In this way, the consumer saying something to the retailer and the brand owner. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm still very grateful to Rachel for the idea.
And okay, so you once you have the brand, you have the label. How did you approach distribution? Was it supermarkets right away? Did you also go through Horeca? How did it work?
As I said, we had this rather unique relationship with Tesco in the USA. So we were doing all of their imported wines into the US, and they liked it. They were a smallish company at the time, so they were able to launch really quickly. So I think that launch probably only took about 6 to 9 months from the time that we had the label. For the UK, it was a bit more difficult. The supermarkets in the UK some of them liked it, some of them didn't. But they wanted us to prove that it would work well before they would take the leap. So one of our sales guys, Stuart Bond, he was very good in the convenience sector, and he took it to those convenience retailers, and they really got behind it. And not only did they do well out of it, and they still do very well out of it, iHeart is one of the key brands in the convenience sector in the UK. But that then gave our sales team the confidence to go to the main supermarkets to say, okay, so you gave us this challenge. Here's the proof. The product is working. You can see the rate of sale is working, and it didn't take long for the supermarkets to start buying the product after that.
Do you think something like iHeart could still, if you had the same meeting again today, do you think the same brand could come to life and have the same success today? Or is it something that worked before it was launched 10, 15 years ago?
No, I think there is room for new brands all the time. But you need a lot of luck, you need a bit of timing, you need the right argument, you need the right data, you need the right quality of wine. But if you just look at the top 10 brands in the UK, when I had a look the other day, I think of the top 10 total wine brands in the UK, if you include sparkling, if my memory serves me right, only 3 of them existed 25 years ago. So that means 7 of those top 10 brands, weren't even in existence 25 years ago. And there are a few very recent entrants into that top 10. So clearly consumers in the UK and other markets like innovation, they like new brands, but it's a slightly different science now to create a new brand and to have success with a new brand, but definitely there's still opportunity.
Which role do you think will direct sales play in the future? Do you think we'll see a growth of direct sales compared to intermediated channels like distributions or agencies? Or how do you think the mix will evolve in terms of distribution?
Sales are important, but they're probably overrated in terms of the importance in terms of scale. So I think direct sales are very good to build the brand, to build the credibility of the brand, to create a sort of fan club for your brand. They're very good for special editions. They're very good for trialing a new product. But in almost every market in the world, the bulk of the sales are done in the retailers, and that won't be replaced. So I don't think you can mistake what success of a direct sale looks like in terms of the scale and in terms of the overall amount of cases that you'll sell and the overall profitability. But it's still an important aspect of building a brand.
I was speaking to a couple of producers of natural wine, and of course, those are a bit more niche wines that push a lot on direct sales, a lot on digital, a lot on branding and flashy branding. Uh, what are your views on that market? So, do you think it will grow? Do you think it will remain a niche market? What do you see that's working on that side?
I think it will always remain relatively niche because I don't think it's possible to produce natural wine in the sort of volumes to make it anything more than neat, but still relevant, still interesting. I like the way that the market is developing. There's a lot better quality. The natural wines I've tasted recently have generally been a lot better than what I was trying 5 or 6 years ago. So an interesting side of the market, but probably always remaining niche in my opinion.
I read an interview you gave a while ago, and you were mentioning the fact that successful brands need a 360 degrees approach to sales. Could you break a bit down what does that mean and how can sales teams and commercial teams create this approach? And why do you think that not everyone is doing it?
For me, a true 360-degree approach means understanding and integrating every stage of the product's life. And this is from grape growing to winemaking to packaging to logistics to retail, to customer engagement, to exciting the customer. You've got to use all aspects of the modern communication, so social. You've got to be transparent, so you've got to understand the customers care more about what's in the bottle and they care more about sustainability than they used to. So you've got to get this whole approach right, and you have to have your sales team understanding this total approach so that they are delivering your message when they're seeing their customers. And the sales team need to understand every aspect of the story so that when they're seeing their customer, the customer has got total belief, not just in the product, but that company behind that brand will pull customers towards them. Because I always believe with the big retailers that you're basically renting space from them, and the successful products are the ones that can actually drive business and traffic into their stores, not just rely on their customers coming to buy your product. And so that's really what I mean about the 360. It's a total approach and it's a total integration of every stage of the product's line.
I want to switch a bit the topic. I'll tell you a sentence and you tell me if you agree or disagree and why. We are going towards a very polarized market where there are all the fine wines, super expensive wines, so the premium side, and then we have the low price side, and these two sides are the ones that will polarize much of sales in the coming years. And then we have the niche brands, which will still play a role. The middle brands, the position itself between low budget and high budget, will have a lot of challenges in the coming years. Do you agree or disagree?
Great.
Okay. Why?
I think the middle is always a hard place to be, no matter what industry you're in, and wine is no different. And that's not to say that if you're in the middle, you're not going to succeed, but it is a tough place because if you think about if you are in the middle, you're probably going to be too expensive for mainstream sales, but you're not going to be premium enough for the fine wine segment that you mentioned. So we have quite a lot of brands in the middle, and you have to work really hard. And there's nothing wrong with working really hard, but it is difficult. And as I said, some of them will succeed, but it's a difficult place to be.
Do you think we'll see a lot of repositioning towards maybe the more premium segment? Or maybe we will see brands consolidating into larger conglomerates. So, what do you think will happen?
I don't think you can just become premium because
Sure.
really all you're doing is putting the price up for no reason. So I don't think that will work. I think that you just got to work extra hard to find more distribution points. You've got to find more customers. You've got to find ways of attracting the consumer, of doing things better and differently to succeed in that space. But I don't think we're going to move necessarily to a more premium market. Honestly, I think we have the right sort of balance at the moment. I mean, wine is a fantastic industry to be in. We've got some of the very best products in the world, and then we've got some of the very best brands in the world at the more everyday level, and then we've got some fantastic products in the middle, and it's amazing. Maybe there are too many. Really, there are too many brands. There are too many wine growers in the world to make it successful. If you compare it to beer, there are thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands more, but it's still a great place to be, and it's still a wonderful industry to work in.
So now, of course, the news of this year, of course, has been the tariffs in the US. I come from an area where they are the area where they make prosecco, and the US is, I think, 80 or 90% of the export of prosecco. So that's the far larger majority of sales. Which which do you think? I mean, as sales in the US are going down, do you see there are other promising markets for export? Do you think we still go and sell to the US from Europe? So what do you see? Do you think will happen in terms of exports?
I think the tariff thing with the US, without wanting to belittle the importance of the tariff, I think that will settle down. The US is a massive market. The tariffs, the implication of the tariffs are not so significant when you look at pricing in the US. There is a lot of wines being sold at a much higher price point than in the UK and most of Europe and the US. So either producers and retailers and distributors and importers can decide to price up, or maybe they can assume some of that lost margin in their own P&L. But whatever they do, I have a feeling that it won't have as significant an impact as everybody thinks. It's definitely had an impact in the short term because there's been so much uncertainty that some people have just taken the opportunity to stop shipments. So that's potentially lost sales. But as things settle down, I have a feeling that it will work itself out. And then in terms of the question about other markets, I mean, of course, all the markets are interesting. I can see potential in places like India, which is a bit unexplored so far for imported wine. China's been up and down, but there's always going to be potential in China. I have some direct work with the Nordic markets and Benelux and Republic of Ireland. They're really good markets. I'm doing some work with Japan and Canada at the moment, which are interesting. I wouldn't single out any market really for being bigger or better or worse, but I think as a brand owner, you have to be aware of every single market in the world. And back to the original question, yeah, I think the situation in the US will stabilize and work itself out in time and probably not have as much impact as people suspect.
One of the other buzzwords or the mainstream themes in the industry has been also those stats that you see sometimes where you see like Gen Z or young people are drinking way less wine. Sometimes you see some data which is a bit more reassuring. Sometimes it's a disaster, so it's not really clear what will happen. What do you think will happen on that market? Do you think it's still an important market for wine producers, or is it a market that eventually will stop and maybe will move towards more niche, brands or low alcohol brands, for example? What do you think will happen on that side?
I have a feeling that we overcomplicate the generational differences. As you said, you read some data somewhere saying that Gen Z aren't drinking, then you read some data that Gen Z are drinking as much as the generations that came before them. I think trends are changing in the wine market, and that's what we should concentrate on. And so whatever the age group, people still gather around a table to share food and conversations and stories, and wine belongs in that moment for sure. It's social, it's food friendly, and it's civilized. So rather than chasing every micro trend, I think we should focus on wine's enduring role and connecting people in social situations, but also understanding that there are other products that are becoming more relevant that also involve wine to a degree, and it's up to the industry and to brand owners to keep pace with those innovations. But yeah, I think we probably overcomplicate the generational difference, in my opinion.
Do you think low or no alcohol wine will have a similar growth to no alcohol beer, or do you think it's a different market?
I think it's a different market, but I think it will be significant. And what I'm seeing from our own company, so Henkel Freixenet are making some extraordinarily good 0% wines at the moment and some very good mid-strength wines. I see from some other producers some really good quality coming out as well. And I think this will be the key to low and no. I think certainly from a UK perspective, I think that people sort of misunderstood the intention of the consumer. And for me, most of the consumers who are drinking low or no, they're making an informed choice, probably for health or a short-term situation like driving or pregnancy. But it's not about money. It's about, I want a really good product. Either doesn't have as much alcohol as the normal drink that I have or have zero alcohol. And this is not about money. I want something that looks great. I want something that tastes great. I want something that makes me feel good. And I think at the beginning of the journey of this 0% and low and no, retailers and producers concentrated too much on having a low price product rather than actually satisfying the consumer's desire to have something that was good. And I think we see that in beer and we see that in spirits, where the price is pretty much the same as the alcoholic version of that product, and they're making some really good products. And wine will catch up to that pretty quickly, and I hope the retailers will come on that journey with us, so that we can actually make some really good quality products that are sustainable from a financial perspective, and that also excite the customers to drink more 0% and more lower alcohol wine products.
I was thinking about beer, and if we see no alcohol beer, there's a lot of big brands. I'm thinking of Leffe or Heineken, which basically kept the same branding. So it's the same bottle with maybe the just 0% written on it. But in wine, on the other side, the brands I know, I see it's completely different brands, similar to the approach you follow with iHeart, so very flashy labels, etc. Do you think that the trend will stay the same, or we will see a traditional brand doing a 0% wine, just keeping the same label and packaging?
Yeah, I think it's already happening, and we will do that as a company. I think it'll be merchandised in a different space to avoid confusion. The bottles will clearly say 0%, so that it can't be confused. But I think the brand is all about trust. So if you have a successful brand and you can make a really good 0% product with that brand, then why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use that? And the customers of that product will be excited to try, I'm sure.
Let's move a bit to sustainability. So you mentioned you joined Pacamama recently. So first of all, maybe if you can tell us in a couple of sentences what is Pacamama, and then I would like to explore a bit more the concept of sustainable packaging because I see it's a very big trend. I know a couple of producers that use paper bottles, aluminum bottles. So where do you think this market is going, and we see this kind of products and packaging replace completely glass eventually at some point?
Well, Pacamama it's a packaging company that specializes in recycled PET. At the moment, their bottles are also flat, so they're not only much more efficient to blow the mold than to blow glass, but they're also incredibly more sustainable in terms of moving the product around the country or around the world. So you save at the point of execution. You also save energy when you're transporting the product. Great for shoppers, unbreakable. They're obviously made for everyday wines, for wines that you're going to drink within 2 or 3 years of purchase, which is what most mainstream brands are anyway. And there's some really good innovations coming. So at the moment, the company is working on different designs that will really excite customers. So at the moment, Pacamama is a small company, but it's growing, and they're gaining more listings, more recognition as every day goes by. Sustainable packaging, whether it's Pacamama or the other versions that you stated, is definitely something for the future. We need lower emissions. We need lighter weight. It's a bit ridiculous to be transporting glass all over the world when you don't need to. Coca-Cola doesn't do it, and they are the biggest drinks company in the world, I think. So why would wine do it? Personally, I obviously think that Pacamama's options and the way they're doing business is better than the other alternatives that you mentioned for a variety of reasons. One of them is that it's totally recyclable material they're using. It's 100% recyclable afterwards as well, whereas some of those products have aspects in them that can't be recycled. And the science in terms of the quality has improved a lot. So the preservation of the wine quality has improved a lot and is improving. So exciting times for them.
From a consumer perspective, so I can see this kind of packaging being quite attractive, for example, in supermarkets for mass consumer, because it's something that's new. People might be curious, but then also the labels usually are a bit different, so that might be a bit more attractive. Do you think we will ever see, I don't know, a 2,000 euros or pounds bottle sold in a restaurant? For example, a flat bottle or a paper bottle? The question being, do you think consumers will still perceive the quality of the product also with a different packaging? Because I'm thinking, for example, of the twist. Those bottles that don't have the traditional cork, they have the twist opening, and usually those bottles are perceived as less quality bottles, but that's not necessarily true. Do you think there will be a similar challenge in the quality perception with a different packaging compared to the traditional glass bottle?
It's a very good point, and I do see a lot of similarities to what happened with Stelvin in the 90s, and it was Tesco who really pushed, as one of the retailers, they really pushed the UK into Stelvin. And at the time, amazingly, the on-trade said that they would never have Stelvin bottles on their wine list because their customers wanted cool. And now if you go to most restaurants, they'll refuse to have anything that's not Stelvin. So, I mean, there's been a complete turnaround. And Stelvin is completely normal, and there is no, and certainly in the UK, and if you think about Australia and New Zealand, there is no real quality perception about whether a wine has got a Stelvin or a core. And there are some very good quality, high-priced wines in Stelvin. So maybe not the 2,000 bottle level, but why not have some really good quality wines getting into a Pacamama style bottle? Probably a bottle made for them, probably a bottle that is bespoke to that brand. But I can definitely see that happening in the future. And I don't think that future is too far away, to be honest with you.
Okay, so now I think we can move to a bit of a quick fire. So I will ask you 3 questions, which I would like you to answer in 1, 2, or a few sentences. So you inherit a winery, let's say a very traditional winery which has been on the market since 18,000s, so very traditional brand. You inherit it. Which are the first 3 things you do?
Well, the first thing I'd do would be to meet the team, both individually and as a group. I'd want to understand what they think about the company and think about the brand. Obviously, financials are very important. So second, I'd review all the financials, make sure we know exactly where we stand and where we need to go as a business and where to improve. And then I'd want to meet all of the top customers of the brand and of the winery and understand what they value and, more importantly, what they'd like to be improved. Because I think if you can bring people on the journey with you, then they would believe in your new ownership of that winery.
I say a sentence and I would like you to complete it. So the wine industry would work much better if it stopped.
Navel gazing.
Okay.
What do I mean by that? I think the wine industry is too worried about its own competition, and it's too worried about things like quality and terroir, and not that they're unimportant, but to most consumers and to most customers, as I said at the beginning, wine is very confusing, and let's excite our customers a bit more and let's be more fun. Even if we're making the best product in the world, let's have fun and let's excite people and let's not confuse them with things that are not important to them.
So a more personal one. In the beginning of your career, who or which were the most important influences and that led you to be where you are at the moment?
Well, there are three. So in every aspect of my life, so I've had three main jobs. So my first job was with Moreno Wines, and Juan Moreno Senior, who was the founder of Moreno Wines, undoubtedly was the person I have to thank for being in the industry. Very passionate, really believed in his product, refused to fail, absolutely determined to succeed, and he had he was very, very inspirational. Then I moved to McGuigan, which is now called Australian Vintage, and the CEO there was Brian McGuigan, Australian guy, very similar qualities to Juan Moreno, so passionate, unbelievably hardworking. And then after I started Copestick Murray and when we sold 60% of the business to Henkel, I came across Andreas Brokdemper, who is still the CEO now of Henkel Freixenet, a much bigger company than when I joined and when we sold Copestick Murray. And he too has all of those qualities. And again, amazing work ethic, passionate, inspiring, strategic, intelligent. But what all three of them have is this, from a personal perspective, is they all had this EQ of knowing how to get the best out of me and to understand my strengths and to allow me to concentrate on those strengths, and also the trust to go and deliver what I had to deliver. And if you think back to when I was 19 and when Juan Moreno promoted me, I was only in my 20s, and he gave me a car. I became their first salesman, an expense account. Nobody had been selling his wine to these shops and restaurants before, and he just trusted that I could go out and do it, and I did it. But he gave me the support and the inspiration to do it. And in their own ways, Brian and Andreas have done the same. And then, just as a watch out for the industry, Santiago Navarro, who is CEO of Pacamama, is showing a lot of those qualities. I can see a lot of those three people in Santiago. So watch this space for Santiago. I think he'll be a powerful force in the industry.
Last one, and you can't answer one of your brands. Which is your favorite wine?
Dom Perignon.
Ah, nice. Specific vintage or?
No, I just think it's a great brand. So
Okay.
not necessarily the best quality champagne, but I do love branding, as has probably come across in the interview. And there's just something iconic about the name, about the look of the brand, and it's got a feel good factor when you drink it. And I don't drink enough of it.
I think none of us does. Robin, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you. It was a super great conversation.